Hello, I'm Jim from Louisville, Kentucky, and I like to listen to Scandal Water while I'm sitting on my back porch with a great cup of coffee.
Welcome to Scandal Water, where the tea is hot and the conversation lively.
Your hosts, Candy
and Ashley,
will discuss a peculiar story somehow related to the entertainment industry. This podcast might not change the world, but it just might satisfy your thirst for an intriguing tale.
Oh, it's that time of day. Tune in and hear what the ladies say. It's time to bend your ear when the silver screen appears. Stories about the stage and screen and everything in between. So come on and join the fun. The curtain opens in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, Ashley.
hello.
Oh,
I'm trying something different. I'm doing something different.
Wow, I don't know what we're in for.
I'm spicing it up.
Okay. Wow. All right. I feel like I'm bringing the vibe down by asking you a question that's not as exciting as your intro.
Okay.
When you think about coming of age movies, Ashley, what are some popular ones that come to mind?
You know the immediate one is always the Goonies. Coming of age for
right.
me is always the Goonies.
Yeah.
Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, maybe? I don't
She's
know.
going to sing all her answers, y'all.
What is wrong with me today? I don't know. I'm just like, I'm at the jazz club.
That's right. I mean, she's got the...
I'm trying to stay awake. I'm a little sleepy today, but we're going to get through it. We're going to get through it. Yeah.
I would think of Breakfast Club, 16
Oh, yeah,
Candles.
sure. Yeah, Ferris Bueller. Is that coming of age?
Maybe.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Grease. I don't know.
Yeah, sounds great.
Well, I looked it up, right? I did some Googling. And when you Google best coming of age films, it is interesting because the lists vary greatly. You will come up with some lists that lean towards some of the older films, like Mean Girls, Breakfast Club.
That's considered an older film?
Yes. And then you'll find some that lean towards more recent movies like Lady Bird, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret.
Yeah, okay.
Some will have a combination of both, but almost all of those lists will include one particular film.
I know what you're going to say.
Go ahead and say it.
Stand By Me.
Stand By Me. I absolutely love this film, although it is, I believe, rated R for its themes and language. I should go ahead and put that out there just in case you haven't seen it. But you've not seen it.
Which is me. Yes.
I am so surprised.
I know. I don't. It's what, you know how I've talked about there are certain things that I just missed the boat. I was still on the dock. The boat was way in the water. I missed it.
Yeah.
I don't know how I missed it. Maybe I thought because it was written by Stephen King that it was scary.
I bet you avoided
so
it.
I just avoided it because I thought it was going to be scary. But we're going to remedy that today.
We are. Because guess what? We'll go ahead and tell you right now. Before the break, I'm going to give Ashley some background information about Stand By Me, and then we're going to take a break, watch the movie, and come back and share some of our impressions after seeing it. Because I haven't seen it in a long time.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and you haven't seen it ever.
Ever.
So it'll be good to talk
Ever.
about it. One MSN article that did name Stand By Me as one of the best coming-of-age films of all time said this about it. Plenty of Stephen King novels can be described as coming-of-age stories, so it's no surprise that his 1982 novella, The Body, was adapted for the big screen in the form of 1986's Stand By Me, featuring a cast who would go on to become hugely successful in their own right, including Will Wheaton and the late River Phoenix. The film focuses on a group of young boys who discover a dead body. Stephen King considered it the first successful adaptation of one of his books, and its influence on coming-of-age films and TV shows can still be seen today.
Really?
Supposedly, the actors who auditioned for Stranger Things, which also features 4 young boys in the lead roles, were asked to read lines from Stand By Me.
Wow.
I know.
That's cool.
I really like that. Again, just a reminder, our theme this month is talented teens. And although
Were these kids preteens?
No, they were most of them were preteen.
Okay.
And although they were younger than teens, it was unbelievable how talented they were.
Yeah.
They are probably, in my mind, one of the strongest ensemble casts of young people that you can find in a movie. They are so good. And you all can chime in if you disagree with me. That would be a great question for us.
She'll arm wrestle you over it. I'm throwing it out there.
Well, it is also a very celebrated movie. It came out, as we said, in 1986, which 39 years ago, right? When I checked Rotten Tomatoes just last week, it still maintains a critics rating of 92% and an audience rating of 94%.
That's pretty strong.
Yes, over 250,000 people have weighed in. Ooh. Yeah. It was nominated for a dozen awards, including an Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay. Didn't win the Oscar, but it did win a handful of the other awards. So, we are talking about Stand By Me, which was directed by Rob Reiner.
Oh, Rob Reiner. Okay, I'm back in. Okay.
And distributed by Columbia Pictures. We already heard a little bit about the plot line, but here's a summary from IMDb. It's the summer of 1959 in Castle Rock, Oregon, and 4 12-year-olds, Gordy, Chris, Teddy, and Vern, are fast friends. After learning of the general location of the body of a local boy who has been missing for several days, they set off into the woods to see it. Along the way, they learn about themselves, the meaning of friendship, and the need to stand up for what is right. Yeah.
Do they use the song Stand By Me in it?
They
Is that
absolutely do.
Okay.
Yep. So here's how it came to be. As we've already said, Stephen King had written this novella called The Body, which was included in a collection of stories published in his 1982 book, Different Seasons. Now, what I didn't know was several sources mentioned this, that the story The Body was actually based on a true experience from Stephen King's childhood. I'm going to go down this rabbit trail for just a moment.
Let's get to hopping.
Okay, so after the movie came out in 1986, Rob Reiner gave an interview to the Chicago Tribune where he told about his interaction with Stephen King during this private viewing that they were given Stephen. And he said, "We showed the film to Stephen King alone in a screening room, and when it was over, he was pretty broken up. He excused himself for about 15 minutes. When he came back, he said, 'That's the best film ever made out of anything I've written,' which isn't saying much. 'But you've really captured my story. It is autobiographical. All that was made up was the device of the hunt for the body. I was the writer, and my best friend was the guy who actually did instill the confidence in me to become a writer.'" And I'm not going to read the last sentence because it's going to give you a spoiler for what's coming up in the movie. Okay? But he said it himself. It was autobiographical. All right, but moving back into the timeline, all right? This novella was out there, and these two fellas who were writers, Reynold Gideon and Bruce A. Evans, read it, and they thought this would make a great screenplay. By the way, they also end up being producers on the film.
Good for them.
But, as always, it's not easy getting a movie made, and these guys hit all kinds of roadblocks too. One of the fellas, Bruce A. Evans, said, "Every studio in town had turned us down. The consensus was that no one would be interested in a story about 4 12-year-old boys on a railroad track. It was dark, there was not a girl in it, no one knew how to sell it. Of course, what attracted us to it was that it was a coming-of-age story without girls, or first kisses, or all of that. It was about kids becoming aware of their own mortality."
It's the exact same, or it's the exact opposite problem that we just faced with
I
Clueless.
know, isn't that?
Clueless, they were like, there's not enough boys. There's not enough girls. Like, maybe you don't know.
Right, right.
Maybe it's just a great story and you should just go with that. Producers.
Yeah. Well, finally somebody did. It was Embassy, owned by Norman Lear. Yep.
Well, that's why, Rob. That's probably how Rob got involved too. Norman and him were buds.
Yeah. Well, and Rob actually was brought in to replace the original director they had in mind. He had to bow out because of some conflict he had. So now we've got them on board. I want to mention this because I thought this was pretty interesting. Rob has talked about how this story connected with him. He really wanted to do this project because he felt like, in some ways, I think it was a little bit, it spoke to him about his own life as well. In fact, he was so caught up in the story that he helped the writers revise it, and they made significant changes.
Really?
Yes. And
Is this movie a lot, I'm assuming you have read the short story?
I have. It's been a long time.
Is it a lot different than the short story?
There are some key things that are different. Like, it follows the
interesting.
plot line, but
No, don't tell me.
Yeah, I don't want to give any spoilers,
Yeah.
but one example that won't spoil anything is the original story centers around a different main character.
Oh, and then for Stephen King to say that this is the best adaptation of one of his works.
He ended up loving what they did. We're going to come back to that.
Okay.
But to follow that train of thought about Rob Reiner connecting to it, he said in a 2023 interview with reporter Jeremy Smith from Slash Films, "That's the one that means the most to me, that has the most emotional connection for me of all the films I've made. I don't know if it's my best, but it's the one that means the most to me. I was 12 in 1959. I had 3 other friends.
Aw.
I didn't go through what they did, but I also had the feeling of not knowing how my father felt about me.
Oh.
And then that reporter goes on to write, as the narrator and therefore point of view of the film, Gordy's, that's one of the character, Gordy's complicated relationship with his father is always simmering underneath the surface of everything that happens in the story. It's also one of the connective tissues between the film and Reiner's own life. As he told Smith, and that is a main theme in the film where Gordy, the character Gordy, says, my father doesn't love me. And the character played by River Phoenix says, no, he loves you. He just doesn't know you. He doesn't understand you. So I had those feelings when I was growing up. And that became the basis for the film.
Oh, so that's the heart of it.
And I guess I never really knew what relationship Rob had with his father, Carl. But this led me to do more searching, and I think they ended up growing closer, but there were times when they
A little
were
fraught.
Yes, it was a little tense or distant between them, I guess you'd say. So this is how the movie came to be, but how did they get their cast? With their backing and their screenplay and action, they decided they needed just the right actors for the lead roles. Rob was determined they would be perfect, so they auditioned something like 300 actors.
Oh, after a bit, they would just all blur together for me. How would you keep up with
Well, he actually said that in one of the recent interviews. He said something to the effect of, there were so many I can't remember
Yeah,
details,
yeah,
but
yeah.
he shared a few standout moments.
Okay.
We're going to talk about those in a second. But 2 of the people who didn't get cast, Ethan Hawke and Sean Astin.
Aw, Sean Astin.
Yeah, he auditioned.
He's perfect in everything. Sorry. I've been on your side, Sean.
Well, Will Wheaton played Gordy, as we've already said, and he shared in an interview that he felt like the audition process went on forever. He said once they had settled on about 12 boys that they thought were the
Yeah,
finalists, they
yeah.
just kept still auditioning, mixing and matching until
Yeah.
they got down to what they wanted. He also said that he thought part of what made their performances so good was that they actually cast, quote, 4 young boys who basically were the characters we played.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
So his character, Gordy, is a sensitive boy whose family is mourning.
Is he the main character, basically?
Yes,
Okay.
he is. Whose family is mourning the loss of his older brother, played by 18-year-old John Cusack.
Oh.
In flashback scenes.
Okay.
Yeah. Will was only around 12 during the filming of the movie. He already had some experience as an actor, but not a lot. It was like some smaller roles. Like, for example, he made his TV film debut in A Long Way Home in 1981.
Okay.
So he has the lead, but I mean, it was very ensemble, but technically he was the main character.
Okay.
Richard Dreyfuss played him as the older Gordy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The premise of the film is that Gordy is now older. He's a writer reflecting on this experience that was meaningful from his youth. And Rob knew he wanted a very, very distinctive voice for
Yeah,
this.
Richard Dreyfuss does have a distinctive voice.
So they had an original choice, a man named David Dukes, and he decided he had a great voice, but it wasn't the one he wanted. It wasn't the right tone. And so he started bringing in all these people, including calling up some of his own friends. And he recruited Richard Dreyfuss.
Okay.
Yep. River Phoenix. Amazing.
What a loss.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. He played Chris Chambers. One source referred to his character as the spiritual leader of the group. He was 14 during most of the filming, and yes, sadly, we know he died in 1993 when he was only 23 years old. It was only 7 years after the film was released, and of course, he collapsed outside the Viper Room, which was a popular Hollywood club, and it was a drug overdose.
That's so awful.
Just tragic, just absolutely tragic. And I saw one person, I can't remember who it was one of the castmates who commented exactly what you said. He said, with a talent like that, you mourn the person, you mourn who he was and how much you loved him, but you also mourn the body of work
Yes,
that
is
was
missing.
lost to the world because he was going to do such great
I
things.
think more recently Heath Ledger has that same impact of people that it's such a loss.
Yeah. Rob Reiner, remember we just said that he couldn't remember details of all these auditions, but he commented in a Variety interview, mostly I remember being incredibly moved by River when he came in to read for Chris Chambers. That's one thing that stood out to him. And Kiefer Sutherland was in the movie. He was older. He was 19, I believe, when he was filming. He had a small role. He was a bully named Ace Merrill. And he shared this story about River Phoenix in an interview with The Guardian back in 2021. I worked with the main cast very little when I'd get there early. They would be workshopping scenes and trying out each other's lines. River specifically had such an appetite to learn and be good. And of course he was. He was a year older than the rest of the boys, and I think it made a pretty significant difference. When the others were doing age-appropriate things, River was asking questions like, "Would you mind running lines with me?" He saw me playing guitar and asked, "What song is that? Would you teach me?" His desire to get to the next level was so evident that you knew he was going to do something special. Yeah. And so that's the type of thing you would see time and time again, how he was so talented, so sensitive, and just mature beyond his years. Corey Feldman played the angry Teddy, a character that really struggles with emotional issues.
That fits for him.
And Rob and the producers said that it was the hardest role to cast. At one point, they even considered moving River to that role because they couldn't find anybody else to do it, and they knew he was talented enough to be able to handle it, right? But then Corey Feldman came in, who had such an extensive career. He started acting in commercials at the age of 3, and he'd already been doing TV shows like The Bad News Bears and of course Goonie, all these things. So here's what Corey said about his audition for Teddy. "When I did it, Rob was impressed a lot by the reality in my delivery. I didn't have any problem getting to the emotional places. My life was such turmoil and havoc. I didn't have the best home life. I didn't lead a normal life. I was aware of that from a very early age. I remember being 7 years and coming home from school thinking, am I going to get abused today? Am I going to get beaten today? Most kids don't have to think about that kind of stuff." Isn't that sad?
That is sad. I actually did not remember or know that he was in this movie. The only two that I knew was River Phoenix and Jerry O'Connell. Is he in it? You haven't said him yet.
He's
Those
next.
are the only two that I knew that were in this. There could not be a film I know less about than
Well,
this.
okay. I can't wait till you see this.
I know. So when you say it's a 30, if other people say it's a 30-year-old film, how could you not know? I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, here's a sad note, which I didn't even write in my notes, but I remember reading it. Will said that Corey actually bullied him a little bit on the set.
Aw.
Yeah. This was something obviously that he was saying as an adult. I think he was 44 at the time because he made that comment. He said he remembered that Corey picked on him to the point that a couple of times River would say, "Hey, leave him alone, back off," or the producers would say, Stop. And then he said, as a 44-year-old dad, knowing what his life was like, I get it now.
Yeah.
It didn't make it easy for me as a kid,
Yeah.
but I understand what was going on with him. Yeah. So yes, Jerry O'Connell, he was only 11 when he rolled.
The baby.
I know. He was only 11 when he got the role of Vern. He had done some commercials, but not much. He has spoken a lot. The others have as well. But Jerry's the one who stood out to me as I was going through and doing my research. He has spoken out a lot about how much Rob Reiner's approach to directing young actors resonated with him. He said that, well, they all said this, that Rob was very strategic in how he worked with these kids. Before filming even started, he got these 4 boys, set them up in a hotel room, and he would, during the day, they would play improvisational games, sometimes with the other, with the writers or other people who were involved in the production, but they would play games, improvisational games. He wanted them to bond. He wanted to work with them on some of the basic acting skills. During filming, Rob would use a lot of play or conversations and just different strategies to help them give their best performance. Jerry O'Connell made the comment that it was almost like he was the 5th kid, in their little group.
Yeah.
And he has said, Jerry O'Connell actually directed a Disney Channel show called Andy Mack, and he said that Rob was his role model for how to work with young actors. So just to give an example, Jerry told the story of one of the, I think it may have been the first scene he filmed was this super serious moment when Corey Feldman is having a bit of a breakdown, his character.
Oh, yeah.
And Jerry had no lines. And so, here he is, new to filming, never been in a movie before.
11 years old.
11 years old. And he was kind of like, hey, I'm not in this scene. I'm not really doing anything. And he said it was almost like he was just kind of hanging out watching, like, what's going on? And when it was over, Rob kind of like really kindly and gently talks to him and is like, hey, Jerry, so like, tell me about, like, what's your character doing here? What would you be thinking if your friend started saying those things or doing, and like had this big conversation with him and is talking to him about how you're still acting.
Yeah.
You're in
Reacting
you
is
have
acting.
to be listening and you have to, he was talking about how that just absolutely resonated with him. And he said, quote, a lot of the things that Rob Reiner did with us as kids, I do with these young actors on the set. It's so funny because I think of that every day when I'm on the set and I'm listening to a scene. I'm like, oh, I better listen. Remember, Rob told me to listen.
Oh.
I got to tell that to a 12-year-old who's super talented in everything. Not to get too Hakuna Matata with everybody, but it's the circle of a career.
Yeah.
It's just really fun.
That's nice.
I know. So, we're wrapping this up. We're getting ready to watch
Okay.
this movie soon. Just a few other interesting little notes. Right before they started filming, remember, Embassy had come on board, and then they sold to Columbia, and Columbia didn't want to distribute it.
Why?
They didn't have faith that this was going to be a good movie that was going to do a lot of, bring in a lot of box office.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're in trouble again, and guess who saves the day? Norman Lear, who gave somewhere between 7.5 and 8 million out of his own pocket to make sure that
That's
this
a friend.
continued on. Yep. Now, you asked about the song.
Yeah.
Kiefer Sutherland again was on Jimmy Fallon just last month. I mean, this was just in January.
Mm-hmm.
And he shared the story that one day when they were on the set of Stand By Me, he was playing the guitar and River Phoenix was very interested because he was learning the guitar at that time. I think we already mentioned that. And Kiefer commented he was very, very good, even though he was just learning it. And then Kiefer said, and I was playing Stand By Me and singing that song. And he said, oh, I love the melody of that song. And he hadn't heard it before. So I was teaching
River
it.
hadn't heard that
River
song?
had
Okay.
not heard it before. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was teaching it to him, and Rob Reiner walked by and said, oh, I haven't heard that song for a long time. I love it. And then that was the end of that discussion. And then Rob Reiner ended up using that song for the film and changing the title to Stand By
Wow.
Me. Now, he's not 100% certain
Yeah.
that little exchange was what did it, but he thinks it
planted the
was.
idea.
Yeah. And they said they knew all along they didn't want to call it The Body because it sounded either scary or like it was an inappropriate film.
Right.
So whatever made him change it, everybody has said it was such a smart,
It really
such
was.
a smart move. Yeah. All right. Well, we actually have a few other notes,
Okay.
but they're spoilers.
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm going to save that until we come back.
I'm ready.
We're going to go watch Stand By Me.
Okay, let's do it.
And we are back.
We are back.
We just finished.
Ooh, we did.
Okay, tell me one of your impressions about the movie.
Oh, that was it. It was very good, and there's something so poignant
Yes,
about
that's a good word.
the age of those characters facing most likely their first big adult emotions and adult situations, and it was very moving because sometimes what the film was about isn't what the film was about. There was a lot of stuff bubbling under the surface.
That's so well said. And one of the articles, I can't recall which one to be honest, but it made the comment very similar to what you said, that they felt the strength of this movie was that the producers and Rob did not treat the child actors as children. Those characters were adults.
Yes, they
making
were.
their own decisions
Yeah.
and reacting, just,
It reminded me a lot of the movie The Sandlot.
yeah.
I could see where this would be pave the way for films like that, where it was this very, I don't know, just poignant is the way, and knowing from the beginning, like one of the things I said to you was like, oh, well, great. Now we know this one character doesn't live past
Right.
a certain time. And it's like, oh, fantastic. So now you're watching the whole film going,
Yeah.
you're not going to make it. That kind of thing.
Yeah, that it does add an extra layer of emotional
Yeah.
involvement, investment. One of my first reactions was not having seen it in years upon years. I did not recall that there was as much language as there
there was
is.
a lot.
There was a lot.
There was a lot. But you know what? As you were recalling, you were like, "Oh my goodness, this is way more than I remember." And I said, I think it is most likely Stephen King writes with that kind of language.
True.
I don't read a lot of his stuff, but I think he does write with that language, and I think that he tries to write realistically. So the language that you and I use is not the same language that a 12-year-old boy would use, but I am assuming that 12-year-old boys, if they are out by themselves,
Right.
will use this type of language because they want to be grown-ups.
And because, okay, maybe I'm making big, broad, sweeping generalizations, but I think a lot of times young boys do enjoy potty humor.
Yes, they do.
And, some things that maybe I wouldn't find quite as funny.
Yes. Yes, the adult ladies in the room are like, for real. But I just think they want to be grown up. They want to act like they just want to act like the adults that they've seen. And from what we saw in the film, their adult influences were not that great.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Something else that stood out to me, it is funny because I was watching it kind of revising my thinking because you know how it is. And I said, I believe at the top of the episode, something about how the ensemble was just so amazing. And honestly, they were great.
Yeah.
They did such a good job. But I leave this rewatch thinking so much about River Phoenix.
I did too.
I mean,
He was phenomenal.
he was the standout by far.
To me, the others, you made a point when we first started recording, I think this is what you said, that they looked for kids who were essentially their characters. And that's what I thought. I've seen Corey Feldman in other films, and I think he's a talented actor, but this was very much a Corey Feldman role. It was an angry kid, and also seeing them cry and things, you think, oh, you sweet babies, what have you been through in your personal life that you are able to draw upon those emotions to bring it out when you need to? Because people that have those kind of emotions, they've gone through some stuff in their personal life. You don't just, I don't know anybody that's is that good of an actor that you can just conjure it up. I feel like he was drawing on some personal stuff, and that broke my heart too, knowing later on the struggles that he talked about. So, but River to me was the best actor.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
He felt like he was truly not only embodying his role, but just living it and acting it. And he was kind of like, he was even in white. So he was just the sage of the group,
If you don't mind, I'm going to jump back to the point you just made. When you talked about having those experiences that they could connect to, there was a heartbreaking story Rob Reiner told where he said, even as great an actor as he was, he's a 14-year-old boy, and River was having a hard time with the emotional scene where he cries. He tells the story of how the teacher betrayed him, and he cries, and he was having a hard time getting there. And Rob Reiner said he pulled him aside and he said, River, have you ever had a time when an adult betrayed you? A time when you trusted an adult and they really did you wrong. I want you to think about that. I want you to call that up as you're doing this. And he went and did that scene, and he couldn't stop crying afterwards. And Rob had to kind of they had to comfort him and hug him and get him out of it. But that came to mind as you were saying that a minute ago. And then the other point is, yes, as I was rewatching it, I just kept thinking River Phoenix is the hero in this. He's the one who is so mature, taking care of everybody else, so
reassuring
insightful.
his friend.
Yes, self-sacrificing. He is just the standout, even though technically Gordy's character is supposed to be the main one. I think it's his journey that we follow. You just can't pull away from Chris Chambers.
That's the truth. And it's so sad that, can I say the spoiler?
Yes.
It's okay. That he's the one that doesn't live.
Which I think is part of the heartbreak. And
Yeah.
that last line, that got me too.
Yeah, you don't have any friends like you did when you were 12.
Yeah. And I don't know, even though all four of them were on this journey together,
They were the two best friends.
they were the two, because
Yeah.
all the conversations that involved the other boys were
surface and superficial.
It was these two that kept talking about their deepest, most traumatic and tragic stories. They were so vulnerable with each other, and then they were just so accepting and reassuring to each other.
And it's so sad that they lost touch with the other two boys. You go through this life-altering experience, and then they said that the two, Vern and Teddy, just became a face in the crowd at school, and you're like, oh, that's even heartbreaking.
It is.
It's because you were so close and you went through this experience.
Which brings us back to the whole coming of age thing and what you said about being poignant and nostalgic, because we've all been there. We've all had those beautiful childhood friendships that faded away. We've had the ones that stayed with us. We've had, I mean, like, there were so many elements that you could relate to. And by the way, it was a great soundtrack. You and I commented on that as we were watching.
Yeah. Although I did say during the film, I would have shot him in the kneecap. I would have done it.
Stephen King always does that. His bullies are
so
over the top.
It was
evil.
awful. I'm thinking
They're
you're a grown man and you are picking on these 12-year-olds and saying you're going to cut a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
You need to step back.
That is something. His bullies are over the top evil, and his parents are generally terrible, terrible parents in terms of the characters he creates.
Yeah, Kiefer did a great job with it. He looked insane.
He did. Evil. I would not want to mess with him.
No, I would not. I would have shot him in the kneecap right then.
Well, I know that you got excited at the train scene.
I did. I was a nervous wreck.
Do you want to say anything else about that? Because I have a little behind the scenes I want to share.
So when the train scene comes up, I had said that I did not know anything about this film. But when this train scene comes up, this may have been why I did not want to watch this movie.
Oh, okay.
Because somewhere in my head, I got it in my head that maybe I mixed up the fact that the kid died that they were looking for was hit by a train. And I think in my head that one of these 4 kids was hit,
going to die during this scene.
Yes. So I thought, I can't do this. And I had to make you reassure me that none of them, they are going to make it across this bridge. Because I was like, I can't do this. But I think that must be it. Because watching it, there's no reason for me not to have seen this. I had to have assumed that one of them died on that bridge.
I bet that was it. And even watching it with my telling you they were all going to survive.
I was still upset.
Your knees were pulled up into the chair by the end of the scene.
Yes, they were.
Well, here's a fun behind the scenes story. Okay, of course, the actors were never in any danger. In fact, they used a telephoto lens to shoot the train from a distance. It wasn't even close. But the bad news was, because it wasn't even close, and it was a hot day, and filming takes forever, and these are young boys, they were like disengaged. Rob Reiner needed this to be like climactic, suspenseful, like high drama, and they were not giving it to him.
Well, you know what? Jerry O'Connell delivered later. Whatever they did, I was with Jerry O'Connell. We were one.
Yeah. But, well, this was kind of bad in a way. They had a great relationship with him, but I guess couldn't figure out any other way to get what he needed out of these boys.
Did he get mad at them?
He yelled at him. He said, he was like, this crew is getting tired of this. We've done this so many times. Everybody's hot. Everybody's tired. And you guys keep messing it up. And we're having to do it again and again. And you better just focus and get this right. He's just giving them the big spiel. They got upset. They did it great. And then they hugged it out afterwards. And he said they were all really excited that they did such a great job afterwards. But apparently.
Did they give him some skin? That weirded me out, man. That was a weird handshake.
I wonder if that was a thing in 1959.
I have no idea.
Because there were some things too where I was like, like some of the names they would call each other, and I'm like, that's probably accurate to the period, but that is really not okay in 2025.
Okay now, no. There's one time you went, that would never fly in 2025.
No, yeah, there are some things that did not age well at all. One other little tidbit I will share: the pie eating scene.
Oh, that was disgusting.
It is so gross.
I could have lived without that.
They almost did not put it in the movie.
I don't think they should have. That was just gross.
It was gross. Some people love it though.
Why?
I don't know. But they decided if they were going to do it, they had to do it over the top.
Yeah.
Because
is it in the novella?
Honestly, I don't remember.
Okay.
I have no idea. But they decided, okay, if we're going to do it, and they decided we're going to go over the top. And what kind of storyteller would Gordy be? They decided he would be a bit like Stephen King, which is why they decided to go with like the over the top grossness as well. They used some residents of the city where it was filmed, Brownsville, Oregon, as extras, and they created the vomit using large mixtures of large curd cottage cheese and blueberry pie filling.
Ew.
Yeah. And then I thought I would end with this, Ashley.
Okay.
While I was researching, I discovered that the town of Brownsville, Oregon, where we saw those final scenes when they're crossing the bridge, when the boys separate, that's this town. Several key scenes were filmed in this city. Yeah. They celebrate an annual Stand By Me Day. And I reached out and I was able to get in contact with a lady named Linda McCormick, who was part of the original team of, I think she told me it was 3 ladies, her being one of them, who kicked this off years and years ago.
That's amazing.
And she agreed to send a little audio clip to tell us just a bit about this Stand By Me Day. I'm going to play it for you now.
Oh, yay!
Hello, my name is Linda McCormick, and I'm chairman of the Stand By Me Day in Brownsville, Oregon. I mean, Castle Rock. We found years ago that fans were coming to Brownsville looking to see where the movie was filmed, looking for the scene locations. And so in 2007, the Chamber of Commerce decided to have an event. So we put together some ideas, and that's where I learned by reading the newspaper that I was the chairman. So you got to be careful when you're in a small town. But it went very well. The fans loved it. We did it a few more years. And then because we're a very small town, we started losing our volunteers and we stopped. And then we noticed that Astoria in northwestern Oregon, where Goonies was filmed, picked a date. And that was because they too were having trouble and getting volunteers and helpers. So that way, if it landed during the week, they didn't have to put on as big an event. So that's when we picked, in 2013, we became Stand By Me Day, and we chose July 23rd for the special day. And we've done that ever since. And then last year in 2024, we were hearing from so many people that said, no, do it on a Saturday. We want it on a Saturday. And so this year we're moving it. So it's no longer Stand By Me Day, July 23rd. This year it'll be the 4th Saturday of July, and starting this year. So it'll be July 26th. We're hoping to have a really good time. We're just about to have our first planning meeting for that one. But we do plan to have a blueberry pie eating contest so you can put your face in a pie. And one thing we notice is that most people prefer to have the blueberry on their face. They love it, taking pictures with blueberries on their face. We have walking tours with guides, fan forum, where we'll talk to whoever is here that was in the movie or involved in the movie. So it'll be a lot of fun and keeps the spirit of the movie going. Fans fly in from foreign countries and across the United States, and that's why we need to keep this a fun event and keep it going. So if you get a chance, come and see us. If not, check on Facebook for Stand By Me Day and keep up with what we're doing. Thank you so much, and enjoy the movie next time you see it.
I love that.
That is so cool.
I know. Thank you, Linda, for sending that in. Can I just add, though, this is the cutest thing. Linda, delightful to talk to. Before I got to her, when I first called the Park and Rec number for that area, this lady answered. She was the cutest. The cutest. When I said I was trying to get hold of somebody about the Stand By Me Day, she was like, oh. She was like, as a local, I can just tell you it is the best thing ever, and I have got to get you in contact with somebody because you need to know all about this. And she didn't know I was a podcaster.
Yeah,
she just thought I was somebody wanting to come to the day.
Yeah.
She couldn't have been any more excited.
That's wonderful.
Cute as could be. But just to add a couple more notes, she mentioned the pie eating contest and the tours. One other thing that she mentioned to me on the phone, Linda, that I don't believe she said in her audio clip, was that they have a penny embedded in the crosswalk
where he says a penny
and picks it up. And this penny is not any penny. It's a 1959 penny that has SBM engraved on it.
That's precious.
I know.
I'm gonna die.
I know.
That's so precious.
Loved it.
I'm spent.
Well,
I'm emotionally spent.
I'm going to say, I think we armchaired through the whole second half of this episode. So I think it just kind of brings us to the closing.
Although I would like to point out that when she said Astoria and the Goonies.
Oh, yes.
I thought of that. I was like, what are the odds of two coming of age filmed in Oregon that star Corey Feldman?
Interesting.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
In the 80s. Very interesting.
Oh, and since we're bringing up interesting little tidbits, I will say this as well. Where did Rob Reiner film Princess Bride again? Where did they do part of the filming? I'm trying to recall.
Ooh, that is a great question.
It was out of the country.
Over in England.
Yes. I saw in one of the sources, it said that Rob Reiner finished this film, went off to do Princess Bride and was away for a while, and was shocked that when he came back, all of a sudden, he had a name.
Really?
Yes.
Because of Stand By Me?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. I was wondering in what order it went, if it was this and then Princess or Princess and then this. No. Interesting. Yeah.
Well, we digressed for a moment.
We did.
But I have to cheers River Phoenix.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
What a magnificent performance. And golly, what a loss.
What a loss. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cheers to you, River Phoenix.
Cheers.
If you love what we do, please rate and review our show or become a supporter through Buy Me a Coffee or Patreon. Whether a single gift or recurring monthly donation, your support is what allows us to keep the tea brewing.
Subscribe on your favorite podcast app or the Scandal Water Podcast YouTube channel, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Show notes are available at our website, scandalwaterpodcast.com, where you can also access the merch store and more.
This episode was executive produced by Candy Thomas, that's me, and Ashley Raymer Brown.
That's me.
It was researched and written by Candy Thomas and edited by Ashley Raymer Brown.
A special thank you to Josh Martin, who wrote, composed, and performed the Scandal Water theme and other music, Matt C. Adams, who created the artwork, and Joshua Reith, who designed our website and provides ongoing technical support.
As a reminder, this podcast is purely for entertainment purposes. The thoughts and opinions of the host during each episode of Scandal Water are their own and do not reflect the opinions of any future guests, advertisers, or clearly professional psychologists. Thanks for listening.